My father placed a folder on my counter and said, "I used your emergency money to buy your brother a house." No arguments. I waited 30 minutes for my revenge. Have you ever worked for something, sacrificed for it, only to have someone give it away as if it were theirs to take? Share your story in the comments. Hit the like button and subscribe to see what happens next. My name is Sienna Caldwell, and I am 34 years old. I thought I had seen every way my dad could surprise me, but one night, he did something I never expected. I was in the kitchen, making a cup of coffee, when he walked in holding a folder. He didn't say hello. He didn't even smile. He just placed the folder on the kitchen counter and said in a calm voice, "I used your emergency money to buy your brother a house." No arguments. I froze. My hands were shaking. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He stood there looking proud with a tiny smirk on his face like he wanted me to say, "Thank you, Dad." "You should be happy," he said. "I did what's best for our family." I looked down at the folder. It held years of my savings. I thought about all the late nights I worked, skipping fun trips, saving every penny I could. That money was my safety, my independence, my hard work. And now, Dad had taken it away with one decision that I never agreed to. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said quietly, "Fine. Just wait." He laughed. He thought I had given up. He walked out humming a song that used to play in our house when I was a little girl. That old tune used to make the house feel happy, but now it felt strange, almost like a memory from another life. 30 minutes later, his phone rang. I could hear him from the hallway. At first, his voice was calm, steady. Then it started shaking. "What do you mean reversed? That money transfer was final." I stepped closer to the door to listen. I wanted to hear every word. When his voice cracked, I smiled. And when he shouted my name from the hall, I laughed loud and free. For once, I wasn't the one losing control. He was. Have you ever trusted someone so much that they thought they could make choices for you? I'm asking because I want to know your thoughts. Sometimes we trust people so much that they forget they're not allowed to control us. Growing up, my dad's word was law. Elias Caldwell didn't yell much. He didn't have to. When he said something, the whole house went quiet. My mom nodded. My brother smiled. And I learned very early that staying silent was the safest thing to do. There was no room to ask questions, only to obey. I remember the way he would tap his fingers on the dining table whenever someone disagreed with him. That sound meant the discussion was over. He called it discipline. I called it control, though I never dared say it out loud. My mom, Mama Celeste, believed peace was worth any price. She would lower her eyes and whisper, "Tess, just let it go." Smooth over the tension like wiping dust from a shelf. I used to think she was calm, but I realized she was just tired, not peaceful. She had given up in a quiet way. As for my little brother Nolan, he never had to earn Dad's approval. It was given to him before he even asked. Every award he brought home, no matter how small, was shown as proof of how special he was. Every mistake he made was forgiven and turned into a lesson. If I made a mistake, I got long lectures about responsibility. If Nolan messed up, he got sympathy and another chance. That pattern taught me something deep inside. I would never owe anyone anything. I had to work for my own future, because no one else would protect it the way I could. By the time I was 16, I had 2 jobs. One after school at a diner, and one on weekends babysitting. While Nolan borrowed money from Dad to fill his gas tank, I saved every penny for my first car. I kept the money in an old shoebox under my bed, counting every dollar until I could finally buy a used Honda from a neighbor down the street. That car was my first taste of independence. I washed it every Sunday, drove it to community college, and later to my first real job. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Completely mine. Until one afternoon, I came home and the driveway was empty. My Honda was gone. I rushed inside, heart racing. Dad was sitting at the table, drinking coffee, looking calm. "Where's my car?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't even look at me. "I sold it," he said, like it was nothing important. "What?" I whispered. "The roof needed repairs," he said as if he were reading a grocery list. "We couldn't wait. You can buy another car. Family comes first." Mom appeared from the hallway, her eyes red. "He didn't mean any harm," she whispered. But it was already harmful. It wasn't about the car. It was about the message. Nothing I owned was ever truly mine. My work, my effort, my things, they could be taken anytime. That night, I cried quietly in my room. Not because I had lost a car, but because I realized how powerless I was under Dad's roof. I promised myself that one day, I would leave and never let anyone make decisions for me again. Years later, I kept that promise. I moved out at 22, took a job in Reno, and built a life from scratch. It wasn't glamorous, but it was free. Every bill I paid, every grocery I bought, every piece of furniture in my apartment was earned by me. No one could take it from me, or so I thought. When Dad used my emergency money, it wasn't just a betrayal. It was history repeating itself. The same control, wrapped in different paper. He hadn't changed. He just found a new way to remind me that control was still his favorite thing. Sitting at my kitchen table that morning, I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn peace by obeying. How many times had I said fine, just to stop an argument? How many times had I let him make choices for me, all in the name of family? I remembered learning to drive. I was 17, hands shaking on the steering wheel. Dad said, "You're gripping too tight. Let the car know you're in charge." But that was his problem. He thought control meant safety. For him to let go was to lose power. For me to hold on too tightly was to lose myself. Mom once said, "He means well, Tess. He just doesn't know another way." Maybe she was right. But meaning well doesn't make it okay to break someone's boundaries. It doesn't erase the harm of always being the one who is expected to understand, forgive, and give in. I poured another cup of coffee, but it had gone cold. Its bitterness matched the memories swirling in my head. The folder was still there, sitting on the table. I opened it, not because I needed to see the papers, but because I wanted to remember what they really meant. The folder was full of documents. Each one had Dad's neat handwriting at the bottom, curling like a stamp of ownership. I traced the ink with my fingertip and felt something shift inside me. A small, clean break. Maybe that's what freedom looks like. Not loud or sudden, but quiet. Quietly refusing to play along anymore. For years, I believed peace meant keeping everyone happy. That if I stayed quiet long enough, things would balance themselves out. But peace built on silence isn't real peace. It's surrender dressed as politeness. I thought about the car, the years of double shifts, the anger I swallowed to keep the house calm, and then about last night, when he took what wasn't his again. I realized I had been carrying a heavy weight for decades, the weight of someone else's definition of love. And maybe it was time to put it down. I closed the folder, slid it into a drawer, and whispered, "Not again." The morning sunlight had moved across the kitchen floor, and I could finally feel its warmth. For the first time in years, it felt like freedom. Looking back, the signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. Not until the numbers on my screen forced me to. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, fingers steady over the keyboard. I logged into my bank account, half hoping I had imagined everything. But the page loaded, and there it was, my emergency money gone. Every penny. I stared at the screen. My breath slowed. That number wasn't just money. It was the sum of every compromise I had made to protect myself. And now it is gone. I clicked through the transaction details. Then I saw it. Approved under Guardian's signature, financial authority retained. I blinked. Guardian? That didn't make sense. I hadn't needed a guardian in years. Then it hit me. I remembered the power of attorney form from college. Dad had insisted on being my financial guardian while I worked 2 jobs in case of emergencies. I had completely forgotten about it. He hadn't. Somehow, he had used that old document to take my money. It wasn't an accident. It was planned. I sat back in my chair, letting the realization sink in. I felt anger, yes, but also relief. I wasn't powerless anymore. I knew I could stop him this time. I could protect myself. For decades, I had learned to survive under his control. But now I had the chance to finally live free. I gave them my full name and my account numbers, saying each number slowly, as if they were part of me. Chloe typed quietly for a few minutes, and I waited, my stomach twisting. Finally, she spoke softly. The transfer was done using a form that says someone named Elias Caldwell can manage your money. My stomach felt like it had dropped to my toes. That form should have been canceled years ago. I understand, Miss Caldwell, Chloe said gently. But since the form is still in our system, the bank thought it was okay. You'll need to come into the bank to change it and file a complaint. I tried to keep my voice calm. Can you freeze all the accounts linked to him? Yes, she replied. I can put a temporary hold for 3 days. After that, you have to come in to lock it fully. Bring your ID and any papers that prove this money is yours. Do it, I said firmly. Freeze everything connected to his name. Understood, she said. Her voice got serious but calm. And Sienna, I'm sorry this happened. You're not the first person this has happened to, but you're doing the right thing by acting fast. Her words hit me harder than she meant them to. The right thing. It felt strange, like finally breathing air that belonged to me. When we hung up, I leaned back in my chair and stared at my reflection on the laptop screen. For the first time in hours, I didn't feel weak. I felt strong. I felt like I could finally do something. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Honey, please don't make this worse. Your dad just wanted to help Nolan. He thought he was doing his best." I read it twice. Every word scraped against the raw edges of my patience. Help. That word again. The same word he used when he sold my car. The same word he hid behind every time he decided what I needed. I typed a reply, then deleted it. There was nothing left to say. My mother's loyalty had always been like an echo of my dad's will, soft but strong enough to hold me in place. But not this time. I walked to the sink, turned on the cold water, and let it run over my hands. It steadied me. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past, filling the silence he'd left behind. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I was done being reasonable. I opened my phone again, scrolled to Mom's message, and hit delete. The thread disappeared. My reflection stared back at me, tired but steady. No one would ever tell my story for me again. I whispered it like a promise. No one has the right to call it help when they take something from me. I picked up my bag, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. It was time to face the mess, not as the obedient daughter, but as the woman who finally understood what was hers. By the next morning, I had made my decision. The air inside the bank was too clean and quiet, like nothing bad could ever happen there. I approached the reception desk, introduced myself, and was soon guided to a private office. That's where I met Chloe, the voice from the phone. She was younger than I imagined, maybe in her early 30s, with a kind and steady expression. "Ms. Caldwell," she said, shaking my hand. "I'm glad you came in. Let's take a look at what happened." I nodded and sat down across from her desk while she opened a digital form. The clicking of her keyboard filled the quiet room. "We need to file what's called an unauthorized transfer reversal," she explained. "It's a formal request for the bank to check the transfer, make sure it wasn't approved, and try to get the money back. You'll need to provide proof that the money is yours and a short written statement about the account." I handed her my papers, pay slips, deposit records, old withdrawal slips. She scanned them carefully, nodding occasionally. "Everything looks in order," she said. "I'll also need a written declaration saying the emergency fund was only for your personal use, not shared with anyone else." "It was never shared," I replied quietly. "He just made it look like it was." Chloe's eyes softened. "That happens more than you'd think." She handed me a blank form. My handwriting came out smaller than usual, like each letter was trying to hide from the truth on the paper. As I finished signing the last page, a familiar voice cut through the quiet hum of the office. "Sienna, right? I'll be damned." I turned and saw Jasper Quinn, an old friend from my first job. He had worked in IT back then, the kind of person who could fix anything, but never bragged about it. Now he was standing in the doorway with a company badge from the office next door. "Jasper," I said, genuinely surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Lunch run," he grinned. "Didn't expect to see you in a bank." I smiled weakly. "Not about opening a savings account," I said, half amused, half tired. He looked at the stack of papers on Chloe's desk, then back at me. "Something tells me this isn't about that," he said quietly. I shook my head. "Not even close." Jasper didn't press further. He just nodded with quiet understanding. "You always carried too much for everyone else, Tess. Sometimes family doesn't mean safe. It just means familiar." His words landed gently but deep. The kind of truth you don't want to hear, because it confirms what you already know. "You could say that," I said. "But it looks like you're finally handling yours," he replied with a faint smile. Before I could answer, Chloe stepped out to make copies. Jasper leaned closer and spoke softly. "Some things never change, but make sure the things that need to change actually do." Chloe returned with the copies and a clipboard. "All right," she said, sliding the papers toward me. "Sign here, initial here, and date this one. Once it's submitted, our compliance team will freeze the transfer and review the authorization trail." "How long does that take?" I asked. "Normally 24 hours, she said. "But because you filed on the first day, it might process faster." I nodded, feeling something close to relief. "The reversal won't just stop the transfer," she added. "It will send a notification to all connected accounts. He'll know the moment it happens." The thought should have scared me, but it didn't. For once, I wasn't reacting. I was deciding. When the last signature was done, Chloe gathered the papers neatly into a folder stamped "Fraud Investigation Pending." "You'll get a confirmation email within the hour," she said. "After that, All communication will go through our fraud department. I'll be your contact in case you have questions. Thank you, I said sincerely. You've been more helpful than you know. She smiled. You'd be surprised how many people never come in to fight back. They just accept what's done. I used to be one of them. I walked with her toward the main lobby to finalize the filing. Jasper waited by the exit holding 2 coffees. He handed me one. For the road, he said. Just regular, no sugar. You still drink it that way. I smiled. Some things never change. Good, he said. Just make sure the ones that need to change actually do. We exchanged a brief hug before he left, disappearing into the sunlight outside. His presence felt like an anchor, steady and reassuring. I turned back toward Chloe, who was finishing the electronic filing at her desk. She pressed a few keys, the printer hummed, and she handed me a final receipt. That's it, she said calmly but firmly. If the reversal goes through, it will hit his account before sunset. By sunset, I didn't need to imagine his reaction. I could hear it. My phone lit up with his name before the sun had fully dipped below the skyline. I answered, not because I wanted to, but because part of me still believed silence would only feed the storm. You ungrateful child, Elias roared. His voice was jagged, the kind that used to make me freeze as a kid. Do you have any idea what you've done? You embarrassed this family. You embarrassed me. I held the phone away for a second, letting his fury spill into the empty kitchen, then brought it back to my ear. You took money that wasn't yours, Dad, I said evenly. You taught me to fix mistakes. I just did. His yelling continued, but I didn't flinch. I let the words wash over me. For the first time, I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't hiding. I was standing firm. I realized then that no matter how loud he shouted, no matter how many times he tried to control things, I had something he didn't. The power to make my own choices. The power to protect what was mine. After a long pause, I hung up the phone. The silence that followed was strange and comforting. For the first time in years, I felt like I had space to breathe without fear. I sat down and looked at the bank papers one more time. Everything was ready. Everything was official. Chloe had done her part. Jasper had reminded me that sometimes you can't rely on family to be safe, but you can rely on yourself. Outside, the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, but for now, I had reclaimed something important. My sense of control. My right to decide. And that, I realized, was more valuable than anything else. The silence on the phone was sharp, like the space between lightning and thunder. I could almost feel it, like a cold wind pushing against me. Don't twist my words, he said angrily. I was helping your brother. He needed a start, and you were his safety net. I finished it for him. That's not helping. That's control. His voice sounded serious, like when a teacher is very mad and the whole class has to be quiet. He took a deep breath, the kind he always did before giving a lecture. But this time he hung up first. The click of the phone was louder than I expected, like it carried all the anger and sharp words with it. 10 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I didn't even need to look through the peephole to know who it was. My mom was there, standing on the porch, wearing her gray cardigan. Her eyes were red and wet, like she had been crying. Sienna, please, she said as soon as I opened the door. He's furious. He says you froze his account. You need to take back that complaint before it goes too far. She reached for my hands, but I stepped back gently. Mom, I said softly. He took what wasn't his. Tears came into her eyes. He didn't mean to hurt anyone. He just wanted to help your brother get settled. You know how he is. I nodded slowly. Yes, I did. That's why I couldn't let it go anymore. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about rules. It was about fairness and honesty. She shook her head, her voice shaking like leaves in the wind. Please, sweetheart, you'll break this family apart. I looked at her steadily and tiredly. If keeping quiet keeps it together, maybe it's already broken. The words seemed to hurt her. She turned away, pressing a tissue to her face, whispering, "He's your father." I wanted to reach out to comfort her, to say I understood, but understanding had become a trap I couldn't escape. Sometimes, understanding means forgiving people for things they keep doing again and again. I couldn't do that anymore. She left without another word. The smell of her lavender perfume stayed long after I heard the car drive away. It reminded me of all the times I tried to be the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who didn't make waves. But that daughter was gone. An hour later, my phone rang again. It was Nolan. His voice was calmer this time, almost rehearsed, like he had practiced what he was going to say. "Hey," he said. "Dad says the bank reversed the transfer. Is that true?" It's being processed, I said. They found the signature was not real. So you really did it, he said, his voice hardening. Do you know how this makes him look? He's been calling everyone to explain. You made him lose face. I exhaled slowly. He did that himself when he forged a document. He was trying to help me, Nolan snapped. And you made him a criminal. I didn't make him anything, I said quietly. I just stopped pretending I didn't see what he was doing. He was silent for a few seconds. Then he muttered, You've changed. No, I said. I finally stopped apologizing. The line went dead before I could say anything else. The house was quiet again. Outside, the city lights flickered like tiny, uncaring stars. I watched them from my window, thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my anger and kept quiet because I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. But that silence hadn't protected anyone. It had just let unfairness continue. I sat by the window with my journal, the same one I used to write in when I was saving money for emergencies. The pages smelled faintly of ink and time. They were proof of all the versions of me that had tried to survive quietly, that had tried to please everyone. But not this one. This version of me had a voice. My pen hovered above the paper for only a heartbeat before I wrote the words that finally felt right. This time I choose myself. For the first time, the sentence didn't sound selfish. It felt like balance, the kind you find when the noise finally stops and all that is left is truth. A week later, Mom invited me to dinner. She called it a family talk. The phrase alone told me everything I needed to know. I arrived just before 7. The familiar creak of the front steps greeted me like an old habit I never fully broke. The dining room looked the same as always. Polished oak table, soft amber lights, and the faint smell of lemon polish hiding years of tension. Elias sat at the head of the table, sitting straight and calm in a way that made his control seem like composure. Celeste moved around the kitchen, placing dishes with shaky hands. Nolan leaned back in his chair, scrolling on his phone, barely looking up. When I sat down, Elias cleared his throat. I'm glad you came, he said, his voice even. It's time to put this behind us. Everything's been handled. The accounts are back in order. Let's stop this nonsense before it hurts the family any further. His voice wasn't asking. It was commanding, polite but firm. I didn't reply right away. I watched his calm face, the same face that used to make me question my own memory after every argument. I remembered all the times he made me feel like I was wrong, even when I knew I was right. Sienna, he continued, you've made your point. You embarrassed me. You scared your mother. You've divided this family. But you're still my daughter. I expect you to do the right thing. End this. Nolan smirked faintly, tapping his fingers on the table as if counting down to my surrender. Dad's right, he added. This has gone too far. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thin folder, the same kind of folder Dad once used to drop bombs of authority. This time it was mine. I slid it across the table. That's a copy of the bank's reversal report, I said calmly. The funds are officially restored. My accounts are safe. As of today, I've removed all shared authorizations and linked information. Elias's hand froze mid-gesture. What are you talking about? I met his eyes. From now on, there's no sharing anything. No money, no property, no emergency contacts. I've taken my name off everything tied to this house. Celeste gasped softly, her hand over her mouth. Sienna, no. Elias's calm cracked. His voice rose. You don't just walk away from your family. You think money defines us. No, I said. Control does. He slammed his palm on the table. The sound echoed through the room. Celeste flinched. Nolan's smirk disappeared. You've always been ungrateful, Elias hissed. Everything I did was for you. I know, I said. But none of it was mine. You decided what I needed, what I owed, who I should be. That's not family. That's ownership. Celeste began to cry, her voice breaking. Please, both of you, stop. This isn't what I wanted. She reached for my hand, but I stayed still. Mom, I said gently. I love you, but this has to end somewhere. Nolan stood up suddenly, shoving his chair back. You're unbelievable, he muttered. You think this makes you strong. You just made sure none of us will ever talk again. I looked at him, not angry but pitying. Maybe that's the only way any of us would listen. He grabbed his jacket and left, slamming the door behind him. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost like a physical thing. Elias sat still, his knuckles white, his pride bleeding quietly. Celeste's sobs filled the space where love used to be. I gathered my things and looked around the room one last time. The faded family photos, the clock that ticked through every unspoken word, the walls that had absorbed decades of silence. "I'm not coming back," I said softly. "Take care of yourselves." I stepped outside. The cool night air hit me like truth, sharp, freeing, and final. Behind me, the muffled voices of my parents faded into the hum of the street. For the first time, I didn't turn back. Some endings don't need words. Sometimes silence is the only way to be free. Freedom came quietly, not with celebration, but with peace. The first morning in my new apartment felt unreal. No ticking clock, no footsteps pacing down the hallway, no voice reminding me what I should be doing. Just light through sheer curtains and the sound of the city below. Alive but distant. I made coffee, sat by the window, and realized I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how I spent my day. For the first time in my life, peace wasn't borrowed, it was earned. Weeks turned into months. I found a rhythm in solitude. Work, evening walks, Sunday mornings at the market. My world had shrunk, but it finally fit me. Then slowly news from the old house came to me. Elias Caldwell lost faith in the community after the bank filed its internal report. Word spread quietly that he had used his daughter's money without permission. The man who once commanded respect with a handshake was now met with polite distance. Nolan didn't do well either. The house Dad bought him became a burden. Loan interest ate his paycheck. Within months, he sold it at a loss and left town without a word. His number changed soon after, and I never looked for it. Celeste never disappeared completely. Every few weeks, a short, careful text would arrive. They felt like walking on eggshells. I read them all, then archived them without replying. Forgiveness wasn't the issue. It was close. Some love survives better at a distance. One night, while organizing papers, I found the old folder, the same one Dad had once dropped on my counter like a verdict. Its corners were worn, the papers gone. I slid a blank sheet inside and wrote at the top, "Don't sign away your peace." Then I closed it and placed it in the bottom drawer as a quiet promise. A year later, I still keep the same folder, but it doesn't hold papers anymore. It holds space, proof that I can live without the noise that once defined me. On a calm afternoon, I went into the same bank where it all began. The smell of polished wood and printer ink hadn't changed, but everything else had. Chloe Turner greeted me at the counter. Her hair was shorter, and her badge now read branch manager. "Well, look who's here," she said, smiling. "Back for round 2? "Something like that," I replied. "I'd like to open a new account." She led me to her office, the same one where I once sat trembling with anger. Now I placed a single form on her desk. "Emergency fund too," I said. "Just in case life gets creative again." Chloe laughed softly. "You always did handle storms with style." She processed the request quickly. There, it was officially mine. Signing felt different this time. No weight, no fear of being overwritten, just clarity. When I stepped outside, the air was cool, the kind that makes you breathe deeper. The world felt both bigger and smaller, but for once it belonged to me. That evening, a birthday card waited in my mailbox. The handwriting was familiar, my mother's. The front read, "For my daughter." Inside, just one line, "I'm proud of you, even if he'll never say it." I stood by the kitchen counter reading it again and again, letting the quiet gratitude settle in. It didn't fix everything, but maybe it didn't need to. Later, an email arrived from Nolan. The subject read, "You were right." His message was short. "I get it now. You weren't against us. You were just the only one brave enough to stop pretending." I stared at the words, unsure whether to cry or smile. In the end, I created a new folder in my inbox called Closure and placed the email there. No replies, no reopening old wounds, just peace. That night, I set up my camera for another entry in my video journal. I hit record, looked straight into the lens, and spoke calmly. Family doesn't mean ownership. It means respect. And if they can't give you that, it's okay to walk away. I stopped recording, saved the file, and smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I was free. The next morning, I woke up and realized something important. Freedom isn't loud. It's quiet. It's a soft breath in the morning. It's the calm after a storm. It's knowing you don't have to explain yourself to anyone. And for the first time, I felt that in my bones. The city outside my window was alive with lights and cars, with people hurrying to their jobs and children laughing in the streets. But inside, my apartment was peaceful. My apartment was mine. My life was mine. And I could finally live it without fear, without control, without anyone making decisions for me. I poured a cup of coffee and sat down by the window again. I watched the sun rise slowly over the rooftops. It was simple and beautiful. I realized that happiness isn't about having everything you want. It's about having the space to be yourself, the courage to say no when you need to, the wisdom to walk away when something isn't right, and the strength to know that sometimes love is better when it's at a distance. I thought about the old house, about Elias, about Nolan, and about Celeste. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt understanding, but not the kind that traps you. The kind that sets you free. I wrote in my journal again, adding more words than I ever had before. I am free. I am safe. I am me. That evening, I walked outside and took a deep breath. The air was cool, the kind that makes your chest feel full and alive. I smiled because for the first time in my life, the world felt right, not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. And that was enough.